Welcome to another episode of the Chiro podcast, where we aim to contextualize the process of what it means to become a chiropractor. Something that may be unfamiliar to you, something that maybe you are already in the process of becoming, but we just want to support you and just add a little bit of extra awareness of what it really took for us in our process and just share some experiences that we've had to hopefully inspire you to go and have more experiences of your own. So today I have Dr. Matthew Mix with me from Texas. And I would just love for you, Dr. Matt, to introduce yourself and share a little bit about what your background was and what attracted you to becoming a chiropractor in the first place.
Sure. Yeah, my name, like you said, is Matthew Mix, and I started off with a family getting chiropractic and receiving chiropractic care, and I was the last one. And my dad didn't want me to start because his mindset was once you start, you're hooked. Like it's a drug. And unfortunately, I was in a pretty good car accident. I totaled my dad's Suburban at 15. And at that point, it was time for he knew that I needed to get my spine checked. So that was really the beginning of my chiropractic understanding of what it is we were doing. My sister was going because she has Down syndrome, and so has difficulties with her hips, and actually when she got chiropractic care, she her stuttering would decrease. And
Mm.
so that was why my sister was going. My mom had been in some injuries, and so had my dad. So they were both under care as well. And so once I started and started receiving care, I knew that how I felt, not just physically, but for me, my allergies started getting better. And I realized right away that this was something I wanted to do. So at 15, I knew I wanted to be a chiropractor.
That's a really interesting age because when I think of pre-chiropractic, I think of around the age of 15 being maybe the best time that somebody should start to consider it.
Mm.
Just because you're in high school already, you're starting to think forward as to what you want to do with your life. And can you just maybe go back in time and reflect on some of the things that might have been going through your head once you decided you wanted to become a chiropractor? What were you thinking of doing? What was different about maybe your high school or college experience, knowing you wanted to become a chiropractor?
Yeah, it was a relief. I mean, I knew at that point that this is what I wanted to do as I began care. And the chiropractor I had at the time was, very nice and knowledgeable, and kind of told me what chiropractic was. And yeah, going to high school, I knew that, okay, I needed to, really pay attention to the anatomy stuff and just understanding how the body works. Even though, I knew that I would learn that in chiropractic school, there is a basic understanding of anatomy and that sort of thing that I felt like maybe I needed to learn. And yeah, a lot of my friends at the time had no idea what they wanted to do. And, that was, I graduated high school in 95. And so back then, if you really didn't know what you wanted to do, you were kind of pushed into college thinking, well, at least get a degree, which isn't necessarily the case now,
Mhm.
So I know kids are starting to think about that earlier and earlier. They're talking to my son right now already, and he enters seventh grade here next year, about what do you want to do, so that they could start making the plans, and that college is not just a waste of money for education you don't need. So
Mhm.
it was a good feeling knowing that I had direction at least.
Mhm. And yeah, just speaking about your son, it being 2022, what are some things that you're advising him? Maybe it's way too early for you to even start talking to him like his guidance counselor, but did he come back and share that his guidance counselor were asking him these questions? And I'm just curious how you supported him, just allowing him to follow his own path.
Yeah, in Texas, it's more of they start off. I think of it like a funnel. So they start wide. What type of field would you like to go into? Sciences, more mechanical in nature, and so they try to figure out that, and which I think is a great way to determine, what you feel like you're called to do. For me, I knew I wanted to do something with the body. I quite honestly, I had thought about veterinarian care, and that's where my son is leaning right now. We take dog to an animal chiropractor. And so I really feel like that's probably what he's leaning to and is interested in, because he loves what I do, but he loves animals. And you can become a vet and chiropractor at the same time. That's just a wonderful, addition you can give people these days. And in Texas, equine chiropractic is huge here. So most people bring their horses, but maybe care for them more than their own bodies, actually.
Yeah, a lot of people take more care of their pets than they do of themselves, for sure. Can we fast forward to chiropractic school? Where did you choose to go? Why did you choose to go there? What were some influences you had when you were there?
Sure.
And
Yeah, my mistake was is I used location to determine, geographically where I would look. Um,
me too.
and so I was living in New Orleans at the time, and so Atlanta, for life was a drive. So I went and visited there, and I went to Parker and visited there in Dallas. They were both 7, 8 hours away. Um, I did not. I was told to stay away from any other schools in the area, so I did. Just from local doctors that said, "Hey, these two schools are close and they're good schools." Um, so those are the two that I went and visited, and I picked Parker at that point. And life was going through some turmoil at that time. They were changing presidents and that sort of thing. So that turmoil made me a little nervous. And Dallas was a newer school, and so that's where I spent my time at Parker.
Okay. And can you kind of speak to the culture at Parker as you remember it? Obviously, it's morphed and evolved into what it is today, but
Yeah,
the Parker principle, anything that really shaped your philosophy there?
Yeah, it was Parker was, I think, a good foundation for me, because Parker had, the at the time the original Dr. Parker was Jim Parker was still around, and he actually was the one who recruited me, and so he would send out videotapes back then, and so you had actually homework to do before you actually showed up to your first day at school, which was interesting. But he would send you a tape, and then he would have a list of questions, and you would go through and answer all these questions. And it was really interesting. I had no idea, that was what I would be learning right off the bat. But it was Parker principles. It was, looking for the purpose in your life and the vision, and teaching us the love concept.
Mhm.
And so it was amazing things that I had never heard. And I thought, gee, am I going to chiropractic school, or is this, more about life counseling, that sort of thing? And I think Jim, in his infinite wisdom, was trying to do that. He was trying to make sure, kind of like what I think you're trying to do here, is prepare, students to not just get focused on the hard classes, the sciences, and that sort of thing when they get there, but to step back and understand that it's all part of the mission of becoming the best person you can be for your patients, which I think was huge at the time for me.
Yeah, no, and if we're being completely honest, you've been in practice now over 10 years. I'm around 10 years in practice. There's so much that you bring with you in experience when you've had so much time to witness what chiropractic can do for people of all ages. Um, and yeah, just to speak to the structure that Dr. Jim Parker was creating back then, I believe that structure is essential to a student having clarity when they arrive on day one, knowing why they're going to chiropractic school, knowing what chiropractic is, and having a clear vision, or at least somewhat of a shape of a vision of what they want to study when they get to chiropractic college.
Hmm.
Because as you know, you can go so many ways. You even just mentioned veterinarian chiropractic. And I've had, I think, 4 or 5 speakers on this podcast for people that specialize in equine chiropractic or veterinarian style chiropractic. And yeah, I think it's important students understand the pathways that are available, the options that are available, but that's not enough. I think they need to go deeper and actually develop real skills like touch, improve their touch abilities, improve their communication, learn how to connect with others, maybe even take care of others in different contexts before they even go to chiropractic school. Because, as you know, it's a huge investment today, much more than it was back then.
Yeah.
Can you speak to what types of skills are still really important to you to train on uh, to this day that you still practice, that you still key in on as the things that you count on to help you get results, to help you feel like you're being the best chiropractor you could be?
Yeah, I think there's three main aspects that I would look at. One and that I still look at, and one of them is I have to be physically fit, and there are some, like I absolutely love CrossFit, for instance. And however, if I do it like you're supposed to, I, I'm way too sore and beat up to take care of patients. And so now that's just me. There are other chiropractors that works really well for them. But I have to physically take care of my body. And I love to run, but if I go too far, I'm energy drained to take care of people. So that's the number one thing I look at now. I've been in practice 20 years actually, and it you tend to see, okay, yeah, as you most chiropractors care about physically how they work out, that sort of thing, and but you don't want it to get in the way. And so that's number one. Two would be business. That's something that, when I was going through school, they didn't teach much of. Now, I hear there are some classes. I don't know how deep they go into, but core, simple, basic business concepts, we weren't taught at all. We were taught how to be doctors and how to care for our patients. But beyond that, I've seen really great chiropractors fail because they didn't know core business, how to, take care of employees, how to, run a company. And I'm still learning on that. And
Can
then
you drill down a little bit deeper into business? So taking care of your employees, what does that look like? How do you create that culture?
Yeah, and it's creating the team to take care of people, and it's not easy to do. Everybody, we used to say in our office when we first started hiring people, leave your, to our staff, leave your stuff at the door. But you can't. You've got an employee that has her own life. Maybe she's having problems with family at home or something. And all that comes into this small business concept that we all have as chiropractors. Small business, according to the US, is classified as 25 and under for employees. And most chiropractic offices will never get higher than that. So, you have these people all together in the same location for 8 hours a day, possibly. And you've got to learn how to manage that. And so for me, that was a big deal. I could take care of people, but if I can't get them in the door, if we're not providing great customer service, if the staff doesn't know what chiropractic is and what we can do for the patient, then there's only so much the doctor can do. And so that was huge for me, learning that and learning, these basic customer service skills that I did get some from my dad because he was a business owner, but he never had the employees like we do. And so
So
that
if a
it.
chiropractic student was coming to observe your practice when you're not taking care of people, what are some things that they might observe that you do with the staff on a semi-regular basis? What's the structure for how you manage the practice outside of patient or outside of taking care of people?
Yeah, so we have weekly meetings where we have a very set agenda, where we talk about things that are going on in the office, what we did and did not like from the previous week. We try to figure out with each employee, what do they like doing, what are they good at, and hopefully those two things are the same, and put that employee at that position. Like we've been growing quite a bit now, so we can now, not every employee has to do everything. So if one individual, like recently, we just make someone a tech CA. So that's a technical chiropractic assistant where they are doing all of my computerized scanning to measure the nervous system, and they're learning the x-rays. And so they can take care of all the tech part. And we've got someone else that does all the financial information with patients and scheduling and that sort of thing. So we try to figure out, what everyone's good at and then
Mhm.
place them in that position. And then weekly we train on different things. So we have one employee right now that's had to step up because we have two on maternity leave. So there's always something going on that we're, training on and that sort of thing. So we do that weekly. And then the other key thing I think that you would see too is that we do what we call a huddle in the morning and in the afternoon. So for instance, right now it's 7:19 my time. We start seeing patients at 8 a.m. today. So at 7:45, here in 26 minutes, all the staff comes in my office and we go through who's coming in the morning. And, is there something that this individual maybe said to them that didn't tell me, or vice versa, about either their care or whatever's important to that individual. So we go through each individual appointment, making sure that everybody's all scheduled for what they should be and that sort of thing. So it's just in the preparation. I
Mhm.
want the patient to, I love when the patient says, you know, well, that was easy. Or they look at the entire process of them coming in the office, getting care, and then, and they see that as smooth and simple. It's not simple, but I want the patient to think it's so easy. And,
Mm.
um, and that means we're doing our job and we don't look flustered and we're not doing paperwork in front of them. We're focused on them and them only.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, no, these are really critical pieces that I would love for students to really start to develop an understanding. And even me being in practice, these are the things that I need to start, sort of grow towards doing, build into my structure. It's not the first time I've heard it, and I believe that people do need to hear it several times before it sticks, that they do need to have a preparatory process for taking care of people. You can't just show up, warm up, and start serving. You have to really work with your staff. So thank you for that. I appreciate the details. Really, to me, it's all about the details for students to really start to crystallize all the little aspects. The way that I am encouraging people to approach their sort of supplemental education to the chiropractic education and the pre-chiropractic education is, think of themselves as a scientist, a thinker, an artist, a teacher, and an entrepreneur. And, that's philosophy, science, art, business, and
Mm.
communication. And the more clearly we can articulate the skills that need to be at least thought of, maybe certain skills are not for everybody's practice. You mentioned a couple of things. So the technology that you use, I'm familiar with it. I also use it in my practice. But can you speak to HRV or
Yeah.
surface EMG and thermography, just the core score, what it is that you're giving to people to better understand how their nerve system is functioning?
Yeah, and that's exactly, we use it for that reason and to analyze the spine so that we can give good care. And so we do that on the first visit and then we do it regularly throughout their recommendations. And so the surface EMG measures electrical activity as the nerves exit the spine. And so everyone's a little different, but there should be consistency from the top of the neck through the spine. And that's what we look at for that test. So it's pretty cut and dry. The other one's called thermography, which measures temperature changes. And that's been around in chiropractic forever. That was, the old chiropractors used to use scopes, and I actually use that at the table too, a nervoscope or a chirometer. Regardless, it's measuring temperature changes from side to side of the spine. The idea is that if there's a temperature change, there's the chance of nerve system involvement. And then we use heart rate variability, which is my favorite. And the reason it's my favorite test is because it's measuring adaptability. And um, there's something powerful in knowing that we don't have to live in a bubble. We don't have to make every decision in our health doesn't have to be perfect. We don't have to eat absolutely perfect. We don't have to live these perfect lives. Life is messy and there's going to be stresses. How can we adapt to the stresses in our environment at the highest level possible? And that's what the heart rate variability test looks at. And
Mhm.
so, between those three tests, we really are measuring the nervous system to determine is there any room for improvement. And then we take spinographs, X-rays at specific angles so that we know the line of correction, how to make the adjustment. And
Mhm.
so we compare all that.
So when you say spinograph, are you taking a picture of the entire spine?
Yeah, we stitch it so it's clear. But yes, we take full spine X-rays so that we can properly analyze from occiput, the skull, all the way down to the pelvis and front and side view. And that way we have the angles properly so that as the patient needs to get adjusted, I know exactly the angles we need to adjust them in.
Mm. And where did you learn of that importance? Because that's not what everybody does in
Right.
chiropractic. It seems like it's connected to Gonstead. Can you speak a little bit about your education specifically within the Gonstead framework?
Yeah, going through school, I had zero interest in Gonstead, and and that's important and I'll stop there for a second too, and because that's important as a student. I think you maybe learn something that's a very interesting, and maybe you feel like you get results from it right off the bat, and you think this is the way I'm going to practice. And so I think everybody goes through that, and then as you go through school, you realize, oh wait, this technique's kind of nice too, and I like the way this works. And so you go through these phases where you change what you're doing. The first 3 years of practice, I practiced completely different. I used an instrument to adjust with. I used an integrator with torque release technique, and didn't really focus on X-rays much at all. After that, I had a practice for 3 years, and a hurricane knocked it out. And so I had to find a job. So I went to work as an associate while my wife and I tried to figure out where to reopen. And during that time, I learned that while having those X-rays already drawn up, full spine, where there was no question about the angles, if I needed to adjust a certain part of the spine that maybe I'd not focused on day one with the patient, I didn't have to go back, reanalyze. It was all right there. So the expectation for me at that time became, yeah, you may come in with a headache or back pain, whatever your symptoms are. However, we want you to stay for wellness care. And that means that your whole spine and nerve system we want healthy. So let's just look at it all at once and determine the best part of the nervous system to work on, regardless of your symptoms. And so when I did that for a year, I realized that patients were getting much better results than I had previously gotten. And so that changed my course and how I care for people. And so I learned how to do Gonstead analysis there. We did learn it in school, but being out 3 years, I had not really focused on it, and had to learn it from the doctor that I was working under.
After learning it from that doc, was there any resources that you looked to maybe broaden your or deepen
Yeah.
your understanding of how to draw lines and do analyses on a full spine X-ray? Because I really do want to connect people to resources.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you can kind of reference off the top of your head that may exist today?
Yeah, I would look into Gonstead Systems. A great resource for that is Dr. Dan Lyons, and they actually teach courses. And it's not hey, we're going to learn Gonstead this weekend. It's a lot more specific. It's, hey, we're going to learn Gonstead, and we're going to learn how to do this technique to adjust these areas of the spine in a whole weekend. And so they really get detailed, and so where you can really learn it well. And with the digital X-ray units out and the software that they have now, they have Gonstead, options. And so when you're drawing your lines and determining the angles that you need to adjust in, the software helps you with it too. So the lastly, I would also suggest, I got a book sitting right here, the textbook of clinical chiropractic, and that's will teach you Gonstead analysis. They have the drawings on there and how to draw all the difficult lines, like in the pelvis, and determining the rotational component of possible subluxations. And so yeah, that would be a really good reference to read as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And recently, you were acknowledged for your efforts at the Texas Chiropractic Society. Can you speak about that organization, your involvement with that organization, and just what you believe it means to the profession in that state that you're in?
Yes, absolutely. Chiropractic Society of Texas, or CST, is one of the two state associations in Texas, and it's the one that I've spent my time and energy on since we've lived in Texas for 15 years now. And their purpose is to help support the chiropractors in our profession, and whether that means fighting for the rights of chiropractors to work on children or take x-rays or whatever it happens to be. You have to have politics in mind. And the famous quote, you may not have an interest in politics, but politics has an interest in you. And so I support the CST in Texas. And so it's important to get involved. And I'll tell you too, I didn't realize what was available to the students too, because these doctors that are in this group, they love to have students at the seminars and learning, and the cost is next to nothing of what they charge, basically just for lunch. And you'll meet some of the best doctors that really care and want to help the students grow. And so I love being a part of that. I've been president of it in the past, and still help out quite a bit with position papers on things that are important in the state of Texas.
Can you reflect on some of the things that have been accomplished by the organization in recent years or that you're currently working on?
Yeah, there's been attempts in our state to add medicine to chiropractic, and so they've resisted that pretty well so far. There have been just an overall trying to get chiropractors to become more medical in nature. And it's the state association's stance and my own that chiropractic is a different profession than medicine. And there's no need for us to copy what medicine is doing. And so, we have medical doctors in our town that we refer to, and they refer to us uh, just because they know that we're not going to try to do their job. And
Mhm.
so, if everyone stays their lane, we get along wonderful with other professions. When we start getting out of lane, that's when we get into trouble. And not just in medicine, but physical therapy, for instance, acupuncture, things like that. And so the state association has always tried to keep that separate and distinct, um, section for chiropractic. That hey, what we do is unique. No one else can find and correct subluxations, and by doing that, and that alone, is a huge benefit to the people of this earth. And so, by focusing on that and staying out of other lanes, that's where we see our profession, and that's where we see our patients really thrive.
Mhm. Absolutely. You were just at the seminar this past week or 2 weeks ago. Can you reflect on some of the things you took away from that seminar, some things you learned or things you shared?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a great instructor from Dr. Dooley, Brian Dooley from Sherman, that was there, and he spoke about the 33 principles of chiropractic, which is our basis of understanding of how chiropractic works. Um, we had Dr. Eric Russell there from Life College, and he, of course, spoke on philosophy and a little bit of history about where chiropractic started in Texas. And then we had Dr. Mo, who, on a totally different light, talked about neurology and what are the hard neurological changes that we see happening when someone is subluxated and when someone gets adjusted. It was great information, and just a truly bright and intelligent individual. And then we had Dr. Steve Tullius speak about chiropractic and some principles, as well as how to market chiropractic to the patients. Look, we live in a world where people don't all know what we do, or worse, they think they know what we do, and it's not what we do. And so
Mhm.
Dr. Tullius has really broken it down and helped you communicate that thing. There's nothing worse than being a servant and having no one to serve. And so, knowing that, yes, you have to know chiropractic, you have to know how to run the business, but you have to know how to communicate it in simplistic terms so that patients can get what you're saying and
Mhm.
understand what we have to offer. And then I spoke on chiropractic philosophy and how to be congruent and consistent with every patient in your office and in your community so people know what we do.
Mhm. And is that specifically about like tying the conversation while you're working with somebody back to chiropractic every time, as opposed to just talking about the weather or what you did last weekend?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, and we're human, and so we can't be robots and only talk about what we want to talk about. We have to listen to patients, but understand that they're not here to talk about fishing. You know, they're not here to talk about who won. You know, who's in the Sweet 16. You know, right now, but they are here to get their health to the next level. And
So
so,
what are some ways that you bring it back to that conversation? Because obviously people come in, they're distracted from whatever they were doing before their visit or
yeah,
what's going on in their life. How do you consistently bring it back to chiropractic?
it's understanding what their value is and not talking about what you value, but what they value. You know, this individual I know is in here, for instance, one of the first people that come in this morning is big into, doing the barrel racing. And so she'll want to talk about things like that, but I put it to the context of how can we help you be as successful and perform as good as you can so that you do win that buckle this weekend or whatever it happens to be. So always trying to tie that back into not just chiropractic, but what can I offer them in my care, to check on to make sure that that person's getting the experience they want in life. And
Mhm.
so, when they wanna talk, they wanna talk, but they want you to understand what they're doing so that you can best support them. At least that's the way I take it. And so
Mhm.
making sure we have those conversations with them.
Mhm. Is there any way to train on that as a student to maybe create some theoretical situation or some?
Yeah. I think that happens in groups, and it's gotta happen with, like we had these groups that would get together at Parker to talk about different techniques and that sort of thing. Like, for instance, at the time, and still I do a lot of leg length checks. Well, what does the patient think when I'm walking down and looking at their feet? Do they think I'm checking out their shoes? Like, do they really know what's occurring here? And so in those groups, you learn some of that too, how to explain your technique and how to explain what it is that you're doing and what you're looking for. And so you're touching and telling and that sort of thing. So
Mhm.
that's where I would start if I was a student
Mhm.
and really working through those. And then when you get out, you have to have those conversations constantly with the staff because they go home and they have their spouses and loved ones at home and maybe the spouse doesn't know what you do. So how do we get everybody on the same page so that our communication is congruent in the office?
Mhm. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And then as we wrap up here, if you could maybe just so within the pre-Chiro program, they first get introduced and start to explore chiropractic and the fundamentals. They create a solid foundation, and then they move on to this state model, this inner state, building their inner state, which is just innate broken into inner state, and state was the acronym I mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
And then they move into the apprenticeship where they're doing these structured observations and actually getting their hands dirty at the office, helping out, or just being a fly on the wall. And then they move into starting their own pre-Chiro practice or pre-Chiro club on their campus to gain that experience of what it's like to be in an environment where people don't know what you do and they're not familiar with what you represent, and getting them to communicate with their peers and really help their campus move towards wellness by representing chiropractic and being a pre-Chiro club. How would you recommend? And this is actually relevant to a new graduate who's getting out and into practice today. What should they prioritize their time on if they obviously are not going to be adjusting people, but maybe adjusting minds through their outreach campaigns or through a structure that they're trying to create to make awareness that they are there, that they're present, but also to represent chiropractic.
I think it all starts with your clear goal and sitting down and really determining what is the clear goal for every single individual I come into contact with. And if they're not my patient yet, what does that look like? And what am I trying to convey to this individual? And then following through those steps of knowing the clarity of that. Um, we have to know where we began. We have to know how to describe what chiropractic is, what a subluxation is, to all different types of people, whether they be someone who is very technical and wants the left brain understanding of what it is we do, or the one that just wants to know that you can help and wants to trust you. And so, starting with that clear goal in mind, and then learning the type of individual you're speaking with so that you're truly listening, and then being able to communicate what you know in your heart is true with regards to, does chiropractic work? Can it help them? And the core things people want to know: how much can you help, and how much time and how much money. And so being able to tell them, and I started off thinking, when I was talking to patients, how are they going to, maybe I'm telling them a concept they've never heard before. So how would I tell them what it is they need? And I came to the conclusion at that point, two things. One is, what are the recommendations I would give my mom? If this person is my mom, a loved one of mine, what would I tell her? And why would I give different recommendations to someone that I know and love and that's dear to my heart than some other person who just I just meet? And so that was number one. And number two is, if this is the only conversation you have with this person, what is the one thing that you would like to get across to them? And you could use that in all walks of life. I think about that. My parents are getting older, and my mom recently passed away. Were there any conversations that I didn't have that I should have? You know, and that goes to be the same with everyone. And so if I have someone that I meet that I know I can help, then I better darn well say something, because you never know what could happen, and you never know what you say could really change that individual.
Hmm. Great advice. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I really appreciate it. And I may share a link to get in contact with you in the future if a student watches this and wants to
Sure.
connect. Um, Thank you for supporting the future generations of chiropractic. That's what this is really all about. And I'll probably rewatch this. There's a lot there that's relevant to a person in practice as well. But have fun today in practice this morning. I know you got to go. And yeah, cheers.
Thank you for all you do, Ben. I appreciate you.
Thank you.